Question 1. In the context of working with high-voltage HVACR equipment, Mr. Delgado is tasked with replacing a failed contactor in a rooftop unit during windy conditions. What is the most critical first step before beginning the work? A. Secure all tools with tethers to prevent dropping. B. Test for voltage at all points before touching components. C. Request a second technician to assist with ladder stability. D. Apply lockout agut to de-energize the circuit. Answer. Correct answer, D. Explanation. The primary hazard here is electrical energy, so de-energizing through lockout agut is mandatory per OSHA 1910.333. While testing for voltage is vital, it comes after ensuring energy isolation. Tool tethers and ladder stability are good practices but address secondary hazards. LOTO ensures no accidental energization and is the first control step before any other action is, reducing risk to near zero when applied correctly. Question 2. When analyzing the hazards of handling our refrigerants in a poorly ventilated mechanical room, which control measure is most effective to implement? First, A. Use only non-sparking tools. B. Increase mechanical ventilation before starting work. C. Wear a self-contained breathing apparatus SCBA. D. Post hazard signage outside the work area. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Our refrigerants are mildly flammable with potential asphyxiation risks in confined areas. OSHA and ASHRAE guidelines emphasize ventilation as the primary control to dilute vapors before other measures. SCBA is only necessary in high-concentration leak scenarios. Non-sparking tools reduce ignition risk but don't address accumulation. Signage is administrative and does not mitigate hazard presence. Ventilation directly removes or reduces the hazard before work starts. Question 3. By evaluating a slip hazard caused by condensation pooling near an air handler in a customer's basement, the technician's first action should be to A. Install some pump to remove water continuously. B. Wipe the floor dry and proceed with the service. C. Place caution signs and block off the area temporarily. D. Identify and fix the source of the leak or drainage issue. Answer. Correct answer, D. Explanation. Addressing root cause is a core safety principle. While caution signs reduce immediate exposure, the hazard persists. Simply wiping the floor doesn't prevent recurrence. Some pump is potential solution but may not be necessary if drain line fix suffices. OSHA's hazard control hierarchy prioritizes elimination or engineering controls over administrative measures, making source correction the most effective initial step. Question 4. Through the lens of lockout agut during compressor maintenance, Mr. Ahmed is informed that another crew must run nearby lighting circuits from the same panel. What should he do to ensure compliance and safety? A. Permit the lighting crew to work while his LOTO remains on the compressor circuit only. B. Remove LOTO temporarily and reinstall once the other crew is done. C. Coordinate with the lighting crew to ensure both circuits are locked out together. D. Install a physical barrier around the compressor instead of using LOTO. Answer. Correct answer, C. Explanation. OSHA 1910.147 requires that all potentially hazardous energy sources affecting work be controlled. Coordination ensures both crews are protected without compromising isolation. Removing LOTO mid-task increases risk. Physical barriers cannot prevent electrical energization. Limiting lockout to only the compressor circuit risks shared neutral or panel interactions. Energizing unintentionally. Joint LOTO ensures comprehensive protection. Question 5. In terms of PPE selection for brazing in a confined space, which choice is most aligned with best safety practices? A. Safety glasses and a standard dust mask. B. Auto darkening welding helmet and fire assistant clothing. C. Earring protection and nitrile gloves. D. High visibility vest and steel toe boots. Answer. Correct answer, B. Explanation. Brazing in confined spaces involves high heat, sparks, and UV exposure, making eye face protection and fire assistant clothing essential per ANSYS 1 and OSHA welding safety guidelines. Dust masks do not protect from fumes, and nitrile gloves may melt. High visibility vests and steel toe boots may be necessary for other hazards, but not primary brazing protection. Earring protection is secondary unless levels exceed permissible exposure limits. Question 6. While examining a refrigerant leak in a walk-in freezer, Larson detects a faint odor and feels lightheaded. What should she do immediately? A. Attempt to locate the leak quickly and complete the repair. B. Leave the area and ventilate before continuing work. C. Switch to a different refrigerant with lower toxicity. D. Wear a half-mask respirator and keep working. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Symptoms indicate possible refrigerant overexposure requiring immediate evacuation and ventilation per EPA Section 608 and OSHA Respiratory Safety Guidelines. Continuing work or switching refrigerants does not address the acute hazard. A half-mask respirator may not provide adequate protection against oxygen displacement. Removing oneself from the hazard zone and ensuring fresh air circulation prevents worsening symptoms and potential loss of consciousness. Question 7. The impact of tool inspection protocols on preventing electrical injuries is best demonstrated by which example? A. Using a damaged extension cord if it still functions. B. Inspecting cords and plugs for frays before each use. C. Wrapping exposed wires with electrical tape. D. Allowing others to borrow personal insulated tools without checks. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Pre-use inspections catch insulation damage, loose connections, or exposed conductors before they can cause shock or fire hazards. Electrical tape repairs are temporary and not OSHA compliant for cord damage. Using damaged cords or uninspected tools increases injury risk. Lending tools without checks bypasses verification, risking unsafe equipment use. OSHA 1910.334 requires inspection before use to maintain equipment integrity. Question 8. With respect to confined space HVAC work, Mr. Brooks must service a fan motor inside a narrow duct. What is his first step under OSHA requirements? A. Measure oxygen levels and check for hazardous gases. B. Set up a retrieval system with a tripod. C. Notify the facility manager about the entry. D. Wear protective gloves and knee pads. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. OSHA 1910.146 mandates atmospheric testing before entry into confined spaces to ensure safe oxygen levels, 19.5 to 3.5%, and absence of toxic gases. Retrieval systems and PPE are important but come after confirming atmosphere safety. Notification is administrative and doesn't prevent immediate life-threatening hazards. Without atmospheric testing, the worker risks suffocation or poisoning. Question 9. Considering the evidence a fire starts in a rooftop HVAC unit due to a wiring fault, the technician is nearby with an extinguisher. What should be his immediate action? A. Pull the fire alarm and evacuate. B. Disconnect power to the unit before extinguishing. C. Attempt to put out the fire while power is still on. D. Wait for the fire department to arrive. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Electrical fires require power isolation before suppression to avoid electrocution as per NFPA 7I, while alarm activation and evacuation are critical if the technician can safely cut power and then use a Class C extinguisher. The hazard is minimized. Fighting the fire with power on is dangerous and delaying response may allow escalation. Safety comes first, but immediate denergization is key when to do so. Question 10. From a practical standpoint, Mr. Chang is installing ductwork on scaffolding in a warehouse, which measure most effectively reduces fall risk. A. Wearing a harness tied off to a secure anchor point. B. Keeping tools in a belt instead of on the platform edge. C. Assigning a spotter to hand tools from below. D. Ensuring scaffolding wheels are locked. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. OSHA fall protection standards require personal fall arrest systems when working at height without guardrails. Harnesses tied to secure anchors stop falls entirely. Tool belts and spotters improve efficiency and reduce dropped object hazards, while locked wheels prevent scaffolding movement. However, these do not protect the worker if they lose balance. Fall arrest equipment directly addresses the primary hazard, falling from height. Question 11. Given the circumstances, Ramirez is preparing to recover refrigerant from a leaking a highly flammable refrigerant system in a residential setting. What is the safest procedure she should follow before starting recovery? A. Ensure all spark-producing tools are removed from the work area. B. Immediately open windows and doors for natural ventilation only. C. Use an inert gas to purge the system before recovery. D. Wear only standard PPE since the refrigerant is non-toxic. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Our refrigerants pose high flammability risks. Removing ignition sources, spark-producing tools is essential to prevent fire or explosion. Natural ventilation alone may be insufficient in confined or enclosed spaces. Purging with inert gas is not standard before recovery and can introduce other hazards. Standard PPE is insufficient because additional flame-resistant clothing or specialized respiratory protection may be required depending on concentration and ventilation. Question 12. In the absence of an emergency action plan is to sing encounters. A severe refrigerant leak that causes dizziness and nausea among workers. What should be the immediate priority? A. Administer first aid on site and wait for medical professionals. B. Evacuate all personnel to a safe location and notify emergency services. C. Attempt to repair the leak before evacuating to prevent further release. D. Seal off the area with tape to prevent others from entering. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Immediate evacuation is critical in refrigerant leak incidents to prevent exposure. However, attempting repair without proper protective equipment or ventilation can worsen the situation and increase risk. OSHA and EPA protocols prioritize hazard control first, but only if it can be done safely. In this scenario, evacuation and notifying emergency services should be the priority. Sealing off with tape is insufficient and reactive, rather than proactive. Question 13. From a practical standpoint, Mr. O'Neill is using metal ladder near energized electrical equipment on rooftop, which action best reduces the risk of electrical shock. A. Positioning the ladder on dry, stable ground away from power lines. B. Wearing leather-soled shoes while climbing the ladder. C. Using fiberglass or wooden ladder instead of metal. D. Ensuring the ladder's feet are secured with sandbags. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Metal ladders conduct electricity and increase shock risk. OSHA and NFPA 7-tie recommend using non-conductive ladders such as fiberglass or wood near energized electrical sources. Dry ground and secured feet improve stability but do not reduce electrical conductivity. Leather shoes provide minimal insulation compared to proper ladder material selection. Question 14. Based on the information, a technician working with refrigerant cylinders notices that the cylinder valve is damaged and leaking slightly. What is the best immediate course of action? A. Place the cylinder outdoors in a well-ventilated area and continue work. B. Attempt to tighten the valve with tools to stop the leak. C. Immediately move the cylinder to a safe area, tag it and remove from service. D. Use a patching compound to seal the valve temporarily. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Leaking cylinders present a severe safety hazard due to potential refrigerant release and pressure. Temporary fixes like patching compounds are unsafe and do not comply with OSHA or EPA cylinder handling standards. The correct response is to remove and tag the cylinder to prevent use and notify supervisors for proper disposal or repair. Placing outdoors without controlling the leak risks environmental contamination exposure. Question 15. When considering proper lockout procedures for servicing an HVACR unit, what must Mr. Kim verify before starting work? A. That all control switches are turned off. B. The unit is completely de-energized and cannot be restarted without removing the lock. C. The technician has appropriate PPE for the task. D. The presence of a second person to assist in case of emergency. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The core of LOTO is ensuring energy isolation, so equipment cannot start unexpectedly. Simply turning off switches does not guarantee energy is locked out. PPE and assistance are important but secondary to energy control. OSHA 1910.147 explicitly requires locks and tags to prevent re-energization until work is complete and locks removed by authorized personnel only. Question 16. The relationship between ergonomic injury prevention and proper lifting techniques is best demonstrated by which practice? A. bending at the waist and twisting to move heavy equipment quicker. B. Keeping the load close to the body while lifting and avoiding twisting. C. Using back muscles primarily to lift heavy objects. D. Asking for help only after attempting the lift alone. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Proper lifting techniques emphasize bending at the knees, keeping the load close, and avoiding twisting to prevent musculoskeletal injuries. Back muscles are vulnerable to strain and should not bear the brunt alone. Asking for assistance proactively is critical, especially for heavy or awkward loads, to reduce injury risk. OSHA's ergonomic guidelines support teamwork to prevent overexertion. Question 17. In light of recent developments, is Patel's reviewing safety data sheets (SDS) for a new refrigerant with unknown properties. What is the SDS section she should review first to understand immediate hazards? A. Section 8. Exposure controls, personal protection. B. Section 2. Hazard identification. C. Section 11. Toxicological information. D. Section 6. Accidental release measures. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Toxicological information explains the potential health effects and exposure risks critical for immediate hazard recognition, while hazard identification summarizes hazards. Toxicology details symptoms, exposure limits, and medical implications essential for PPE decisions and emergency response. Exposure controls are important but come after hazard understanding. Accidental release sections address containment, not initial hazard knowledge. Question 18. The fundamental question is, when working on an HVACR system with high-pressure refrigerant lines, which safety measure best mitigates the risk of sudden pressure release? A. Always wear eye protection and gloves. B. Slowly open valves and relieve pressure before disconnecting lines. C. Use a hammer to loosen stuck fittings. D. Remove caps immediately before servicing. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Eye protection and gloves are mandatory but do not prevent pressure release injuries. Slow valve operation and pressure relief are critical for safety, ensuring controlled depressurization before line disconnection per EPA and ASHRAE guidelines. Using a hammer to loosen fittings risks sparks and damage. Removing caps immediately risks exposure to pressurized refrigerant. Proper procedure is pressure relief first, mechanical force for premature uncapping. Question 19. Among the various fire safety protocols, what is the most important consideration when selecting a fire extinguisher for an electrical fire in an HVAC equipment room? A. A Class A extinguisher designed for combustibles like wood and paper. B. A CO or Class C extinguisher rated for electrical fires. C. A water-based extinguisher for cooling hot equipment. D. Any extinguisher with a high capacity for large fires. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Class C or CO extinguishers are specifically designed to handle electrical fires safely by avoiding conductivity. Water-based or Class extinguishers can conduct electricity and pose shock risks. Capacity is important, but selecting the correct extinguisher class to match the fire type is critical. OSHA and NFPA standards mandate using appropriate extinguisher types to ensure effectiveness and safety. Question 20. During the process of assessing potential slip, trip, and fall hazards on a job site, Mr. Bennett notices uneven flooring and scattered tools. What is the best overall approach to mitigate these hazards long-term? A. Install warning signs near the affected areas. B. Provide workers with non-slip footwear. C. Regular housekeeping and designated tool storage protocols. D. Use temporary mats and tape to cover uneven surfaces. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. While warning signs alert workers, they do not remove hazards. Non-slip footwear helps reduce injury but does not address hazard presence. Temporary mats may help but can become trip hazards if poorly maintained. The best approach is systematic housekeeping and tool organization to eliminate hazards. OSHA's hierarchy favors hazard elimination over reliance on administrative controls like signage. Question 21. Across different scenarios, Mr. Franken must enter a confined space to service an HVAC unit. Which safety practice must he ensure is completed before entry? A. Donning a full-face respirator without atmospheric testing. B. Conducting atmospheric testing for oxygen levels and hazardous gases. C. Wearing insulated gloves and safety glasses. D. Locking out the electrical panel controlling the HVAC unit. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA confined space standards require atmospheric testing prior to entry to ensure safe oxygen levels and absence of toxic or flammable gases. PPE and LOTO are critical but come after confirming the atmosphere is safe. Wearing a respirator without testing may provide a false sense of security. Atmospheric testing is the essential first step to prevent suffocation or poisoning. Question 22. Based on the information is Torres notices a refrigerant cylinder stored horizontally in an area with high heat exposure. What is the best corrective action? A. Move the cylinder to a cool ventilated vertical storage position. B. Ensure the cylinder valve is open to prevent pressure buildup. C. Wrap the cylinder in insulation to protect from heat. D. Mark the cylinder as hot and continue use. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Proper refrigerant cylinder storage requires vertical positioning and avoiding high heat to prevent pressure increase and rupture risk. Wrapping the cylinder in insulation does not adequately protect against heat exposure and could trap heat worsening conditions. The valve must always be closed when storing. Labeling alone does not mitigate risk. Moving to a ventilated, vertical position is the preferred solution. Question 23. From the perspective of electrical safety, Mr. Lawrence is troubleshooting a capacitor in an HVAC unit. What is the safest method to ensure the capacitor is fully discharged before handling? A. Short the terminals with a screwdriver. B. Wait 5 minutes after disconnecting power before touching. C. Use a resisterated discharge tool to safely bleed the capacitor. D. Touch the terminals with insulated gloves to check charge. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Safely discharging capacitors typically involves shorting terminals with a properly insulated tool or resisterated device to eliminate stored charge. Waiting without discharge can be dangerous as capacitors can retain charge for a long time. Touching terminals risk shock even with gloves. Using a screwdriver is common but must be insulated. Resistor discharge tools are safer but less common in the field. Question 24. The interrelationship between fire safety and refrigerant leaks is best understood by recognizing which key hazard. A. Refrigerants always suppress fire, so leaks reduce fire risk. B. Certain refrigerants, especially AL and R types, increase fire or explosion risk if leaked. C. Refrigerant leaks do not pose any fire hazard if ventilation is good. D. Refrigerant leaks cause electrical fires by corroding wiring. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. While some refrigerants can be flammable, most are not inherently fire suppressants. Leaks can indirectly increase fire risks by corroding electrical wiring and causing shorts or sparks. Good ventilation helps but is not a fail-safe against ignition. Recognizing indirect fire hazards like wiring corrosion is essential in comprehensive fire safety protocols. Question 25. To better understand the importance of PPE during welding and brazing on HVACR systems, which statement best summarizes the key safety concern? A. PPE mainly protects against chemical exposure from refrigerants. E. PPE prevents UV irradiation, heat burns, and inhalation of fumes. C. PPE is optional if ventilation is adequate. E. PPE only protects the welder's hands and feet. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Welding and brazing hazards include UV radiation, intense heat, and toxic fumes. PPE protect eyes, skin, respiratory system, and extremities. While chemical exposure is a concern in HVACR, it is secondary to direct thermal and UV hazards in welding. PPE is mandatory regardless of ventilation. Limiting PPE to extremities ignores major exposure routes. Question 26. When faced with a suspected refrigerant leak during system startup, which is the safest immediate response by is to sing A. Continue startup while monitoring for leak severity. B. Shut down the system and ventilate the area before further action. C. Use a cigarette lighter to check for flammable vapors near the leak. D. Tighten fittings to stop the leak while system runs. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. Continuing startup or using ignition sources near leaks is hazardous. Tightening fittings while the system runs risks further leaks or injury. Immediate shutdown and ventilation align with OSHA and EPA guidelines to control exposure. Igniting vapors can cause explosions. Safety demands isolation of the system before any repair attempts. Question 27. A key distinction between Class A and Class C fire extinguishers for HVACR use is A. Class A extinguishers are for electrical fires, Class C for combustibles. B. Class A extinguishers use water or foam, and Class C use non-conductive agents like coal or dry chemical. C. Both extinguishers are interchangeable for any fire type. D. Class C extinguishers are heavier and require special training. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Class A extinguishers target ordinary combustibles, wood, paper, typically using water or foam, which conduct electricity and are unsafe on electrical fires. Class C extinguishers contain non-conductive agents to safely suppress electrical fires without shock hazard. They are not interchangeable, and proper selection per NFPA standards is critical. Question 20. Under the assumption that a technician is performing maintenance on rotating machinery, which safety protocol best reduces the risk of injury? A. Wearing loose clothing for comfort during operation. B. Engaging the lockout gut procedures to isolate energy sources. C. Running the machinery at low speed while servicing. D. Removing guards temporarily to gain better access. Answer. Correct answer. A. Explanation. Loose clothing can get caught in rotating parts, increasing injury risk. Lockout gut isolation is essential to prevent accidental startup. Machinery should never run during servicing. Guards protect workers and must never be removed during operation or maintenance. The only correct safety measure here is lockout gut, not loose clothing. Question 29. Taking into account OSHA's guidelines, what is the primary reason for having an emergency action plan (EAP) in HVACR workplaces? A. To reduce insurance premiums by having documented procedures. B. To ensure coordinated and safe response to incidents minimizing injury and damage. C. To avoid OSHA fines during inspections. D. To provide legal protection from lawsuits. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. While EAPs can reduce injury and support insurance and legal compliance, OSHA mandates them to ensure worker safety through coordinated responses to emergencies. Reducing harm during incidents, avoiding fines is a secondary benefit, not the primary reason. The focus is on protecting health and life by pre-planning. Question 30. When analyzing the risks of refrigerant recovery and disposal, which practice is most compliant with EPA regulations? A. Venting refrigerants to the atmosphere if recovery equipment is unavailable. B. Using certified recovery equipment and ensuring refrigerants are reclaimed or destroyed properly. C. Mixing recovered refrigerants from different systems to save space. D. Allowing uncertified technicians to handle refrigerant recovery during emergencies. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. EPA Section 608 prohibits venting refrigerants, requiring certified recovery and proper handling. Mixing refrigerants can contaminate and degrade recovery effectiveness. Only certified technicians can legally perform recovery to ensure compliance and safety. These regulations protect the environment and human health by minimizing ozone depletion and toxicity.